Welcome, everybody. This is the Sports Den here on Stream Punk Sports, and we have a special guest with us today, Jerry Carino from Gannett, New Jersey, and the Asbury Park Press, college basketball writer extraordinaire. 20 years now covering Seton Hall basketball, I believe.
20 years, man. Where did the time go?
Yeah, You were real nice to me starting out when I was a clueless college student working at WSU at the time.
Wow, I mean that was a much younger version of me, and about 20 pirate coaches ago. It seems like it anyway.
The older you get, the faster time goes, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and then it's of course Scott Churchson below me, and it's the most wonderful time of the year. We have the Big East tournament coming up this week. The Garden is a magical place. And Seton Hall has had an up and down season, but we had a surprise win that we saw in Providence over the weekend. What were your thoughts on that? Do you think it was more? Was it something finally clicking for the Hall, or was it just Providence just checked out? Because I've seemed like a bit of both.
It's a good question. First of all, I think it was the most stunning result of the entire season. I was flabbergasted. I mean, I didn't think they would win. Forget about winning by 24 and just totally drop kicking Providence from the start. Really shocking to go up there with seven healthy guys, 8 guys, 7 guys in the rotation and do that without Kadari Richmond. I don't know how Providence could be disinterested. Like they're on the bubble. I mean, they're not that secure in the NCAA tournament, so I don't see why they would be disinterested. But yes, Seton Hall made them look bad. And I think it was it lightning in a bottle for Seton Hall? Like one of those games where the shots just went in. I saw a pretty well-run offense there. And my thinking is maybe Femi Odakali is really hitting his stride now that the ball is in his hands. Like nobody wants to lose Kadari Richmond. He's terrific point guard, but Femi's been playing off the ball. He's been a little bit of a struggle for him offensively. He's played really good defense all season, but maybe them getting used to him running the show offensively is what they needed for this at this point in time. And so sometimes change is good. Sometimes a spark can come from an unpredictable place. So I think he was really the straw that stirred the drink. And he played well against Villanova. Seton Hall played well offensively against Villanova. The game before, Villanova just made their free throws and closed it out really well. And then you saw the explosion against Providence, which I think it gives you some hope going into the Big East tournament that maybe Seton Hall has one last peek in them.
Yeah,
Kyle, by the way.
Yeah, welcome, Kyle. Kyle's a Villanova grad, so he's right in the Big East ecosystem with us as well.
And it gets a little testy between the two of them and our Rutgers guy as well. So it's a lot of fun to watch that, by the way.
Well, there's a lot Villanova and Seton Hall are in that same half of the bracket, and I think that's the place to be. Like, if you want to make a dark horse run to the final, it's out of the bottom half of the Big East bracket. The top half, forget it. I mean, the 2 best teams are up there. You have Marquette, which is obviously the regular season champ, and UConn, which I think is the second best team right now and very close to the best team the way they're playing. And the other thing, guys, and maybe people have forgotten this, but, UConn is going to bring like 7,000 or 8,000 fans there. I mean, they're going to take over that building. So you don't want to deal with UConn if you can help it. So I like where Seton Hall and Villanova are in the bottom half of the bracket. I think that's the place to make something happen, to create a little chaos. And that's going to be the interesting part to me of this week in the Garden.
Now, in this particular case, looking at this, obviously looking at Seton Hall for a second, it's been a bit of a small challenge year for Shaheen Holloway, given the Cinderella season he had last year at St. Peter's. Do you think any of that with the season that they've had is going to affect the tournament itself? And where also do you see that team going in 2 to 3 years?
Well, for this year, I mean, the big issue they had was they had injuries, right? I mean, Seton Hall had a guy they were counting on to play power forward and center. Alexis Yatno, who could never wound up playing. Dre Davis missed about 6 total weeks. The 6th man with an ankle injury. Twice he was hurt, and knee and ankle, and Kadari Richmond now being hurt with his back down the stretch. So 2 other guys never were able to play. So they were shorthanded the entire season. So I think that got things off to a difficult start. And plus you had a whole new coaching staff a bunch of transfers, four transfers, five transfers, and some holdovers from Kevin Willard's regime. 4 holdovers. So it's a difficult stew to kind of make work, and it took time for it to come together, right? So
yeah.
I think in talking to Shaheen Holloway earlier today, he feels like this is why the team could maybe be peaking late, because it took so much time. Like, remember in the old days, guys, when you had a transfer, they had to sit out a year. So like Quincy McKnight, for example, at Seton Hall, he had to sit out a year. So coming from Sacred Heart. So when he was eligible to play, he knew the system cold. He had been practicing with the team, and he fit right in. Like, that's gone now. So like that transition has to take place on the fly. And sometimes, when you see how the sausage is made with that, it's not so pretty. So Seton Hall's gone through a little bit of that, and that's part of what I think has been the ups and downs of this year. But the foundation's kind of been laid. You asked me where this could go in the next couple of years. You've seen, I think, the foundation laid, the culture laid of a team that's going to defend, going to play hard, and the next step is, can they play consistently, and can they play unselfishly on offense? And maybe they need to add another piece or two. But it's very clear that Seton Hall is going to be a handful as far as effort, attitude, defense in the years to come.
Yeah, and with the free transfers and the name, image, and likeness payments now being on the table, you can both tear apart and rebuild a roster pretty quickly. It works both ways. Both in it's almost like a revolving door. So, who do you think is a dark horse to win the Big East tournament, and who do you think actually would win?
Well, I like Villanova as a dark horse because the way they're playing so well. Notwithstanding a loss to UConn, they played really, really well. And so in the preseason, we all thought Villanova was going to be really good, even though acknowledging the coaching change was going to make a big difference. Of course, you lose a Hall of Fame coach. Jay Wright's probably worth 10 points a game, 5 with his coaching and 5 with the refs. Okay.
Yes.
Only man to ever have a technical rescinded in a Big East game.
Yep.
That's a fact.
I remember that.
I had to pick my jaw up off the floor after that. But anyway, but then, Villanova had all these major obstacles. You talk about injuries with Justin Moore and Cam Whitmore. Like, now it's coming together. I like the way they're playing. I like the star power they have. Justin Moore's played in so many big games. So I think Villanova could be a real sleeper here. And to me, I kind of foresee a Seton Hall Villanova semifinal. I think it's very possible they could meet for a third time.
That would be awesome.
And the 2 games they played, the first game was awfully ugly, but they were both really close. 2 4-point Villanova wins. They have a history of playing these great close games, especially in the Big East tournament. So I just have a feeling we might see that on Friday night. And guys, you've been there. There is no better stage. There's no better environment than the Friday of the Big East tournament, the doubleheader late night in Madison Square Garden in Manhattan, in the greatest city in the world. That's like the event. To me, it's better than the final. To me, in some ways, it's better than the NCAA tournament in some, East Jabib type place. This is like what it's about, in the big city. And so if that happens, it'll be a huge moment. And I think a really good for the Big East, too, to have 2 legacy programs duking it out there with a full Garden with their fans.
I admit that's always been a favorite quirk of mine since the Big East reboot 10 years ago. Is that as of now, it's always been what I call the OG Big East schools. The original ones have won all of the tournaments so far. We'll see if Marquette and Xavier, one of the Midwest schools, changes that this year. But every time. I mean, obviously Villanova's won half of those,
right?
But you had Seton Hall, you had Providence, you had the Georgetown run out of nowhere, which turned out to do more long-term damage for them than good.
Right.
Because they locked Ewing into that ridiculous contract that now they're stuck with.
A big part of that, though, I think, is also like those are the schools that bring the fans there.
Yes,
like those fans, like Villanova fans, build this into their schedule. It's part of their life. Mm-hmm. Like they're there with 3,000 and 4,000 strong every year. This is what they do.
They have buses on campus around that time, and they encourage people to zip on up there. Right. It's a long trip because they don't provide hotels or anything for the students.
Yeah, but people get there. And listen, Villanova alums can afford the hotels. Get out of here with that.
I'm a Villanova alum, and I can't afford jack.
You will in a couple of years. Don't worry about it. Here's the thing.
30s.
they Providence brings fans. Seton Hall fans are always show up. UConn's going to bring a ton of fans. You're going to have the state of Connecticut's going to be there. So like that helps these programs, like the Midwestern programs, although they're great programs and they fill their buildings for their games, right? It's harder for them to travel. So Creighton, we'll see. Creighton, the first Big East tournament of the new, reconfigured league, it was Creighton and Providence in the final. And there was a lot of nerves about, like, well, is there going to be any juice for this? And Creighton brought like 3,000 people. Remember that it was McDermott's son, Greg McDermott's son, Doug, who's probably the best player in the country. And they brought a ton of people, and it kind of made it work. And the thing's been sold out ever since. So, but I do think the location of it and the fact that there's fans who've built this into their life for decades helps those local legacy programs in this spot. Yeah.
So with getting back to Seton Hall, did Shaheen give you an update on Kadari Richmond? I'm sorry, I couldn't even get that whole question out without a straight face.
Ask me the nuclear codes instead, and maybe I'll get that to you. Who knows? I mean, the thing is, even if you get an update, sometimes you get an update and then it's not really an update. So we've done this.
Talk to Tony is the usual update.
Don't want to tip that hand at all.
So. Yeah, and I understand that. Listen, you're gonna. The one thing, coach is gonna lie to you about injuries. Willard, Peichel, they all do it, and it's part of the deal. Like you just kind of after a while, you just kind of blow it off. So we'll see who's warming up, an hour before tip, and then we'll know what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. Now, also with now we have Rutgers in the Big Ten, and they're trending down hard. They really haven't been the same since Mawat Mag got hurt about a month ago. And in what I think was a fitting metaphor for the latter part of their season, where a speaker caught fire in the rack and during the game against Northwestern yesterday, so they had to delay the game to put the fire out.
Yeah, there was smoke everywhere, billowing in the upper reaches of the rafters, and you could smell it. It smelled. It wasn't a barbecue smell either. It smelled like just like something burning, like metal burning, wires burning, and so yeah, that was I guess it was. Rutgers is they do kind of seem to be out of gas. I think the minutes that the starters have taken on, there's not much depth there, and the minutes they've taken on since Mag got hurt, it's been tough for these guys, and they're pretty banged up. Caleb McConnell with his back, Paul Mulcahy with his shoulder. So it's unfortunate because, go back a month and Rutgers was really rolling and looking like a team that could maybe make a run at the second weekend in March. And things have kind of gone sideways. But that's why I just don't get into these predictive metrics and whatnot, because they don't account for the human aspect of the game and like the bends and turns in the road and the toll it can take on these guys' bodies sometimes. So yeah, it's been a tough break for Rutgers. They have to beat Michigan on Thursday in their Big Ten opener, an 8-9 game, and then they'll have a chance to get in the field. Michigan did beat them pretty soundly 2 weeks ago and seems to match up well against them. So Rutgers really has to sort of get a jump start here, and that's why I was advocating in my column for the freshman Derek Simpson to have a bigger role, because I think he's the only guy in the program right now with somewhat fresh legs, and that's really needed for them at this point.
You could almost say the same thing for Jaquan Sanders for Seton Hall. Since he hasn't really played much, but he had he had some brief flashes, but I guess the defense isn't what Coach Holloway wants it to be.
Right, and they don't need him quite as badly as Rutgers needs Simpson. Like Rutgers has basically six guys right now, and Seton Hall has 7 or 8. So, but yeah, fresh legs do matter this time of year. But Simpson is more farther along than Jaquan Sanders. Yeah.
Do you think that Rutgers might need to sweat through Selection Sunday if they lose to Michigan in their first game?
I think they're out. If they lose to Michigan, they're out. I don't think there'll be any sweating. I think they'll be out. So if they win and then they lose to Purdue, then the next round, there might be sweating. Then you're kind of at the mercy of what goes on around the country.
Yeah, especially with the with that joke of an out-of-conference schedule that Rutgers plays, that might finally catch up to them this year.
It could, and that's an area where they got to improve. I know they did try to schedule Gonzaga this year. That fell through. Yeah, they tried to schedule a game with Gonzaga in Seattle. Seattle backed out. Gonzaga backed out late to play that game against Michigan State on the ship, on the aircraft carrier.
Oh, okay.
So they had something, and then was basically a last minute rescheduled for a bigger payday or something, I guess.
Yeah, well, missed to play Michigan State on an aircraft carrier, is a pretty big.
It's an opportunity.
That's a big deal, big televised game, but that fell through, and so they do.
It's rough.
Rutgers does need to upgrade a little bit. I think next year they'll try to get maybe a neutral site game in New York, maybe one of those New York arenas, maybe not the Garden, but maybe the UBS or something. We'll see, but they do need to upgrade that a little bit for sure.
Yeah, and another interesting story from New Jersey hoops. Fairleigh Dickinson, after going 4-22 last year, I believe was their record. They brought in a new coach from a Division II school, which some people said might be a precursor to Fairleigh Dickinson dropping themselves to D2. And they've ended up in a weird situation where they haven't played the tournament final yet, but they've already gotten the automatic bid.
Yeah, so kudos to them because they're on a pretty tight budget over there, and they found a guy from the Division II ranks, Tobin Anderson, who's one heck of a coach. What a great job he's done. He brought his backcourt with him from St. Thomas Aquinas, 2 post-grads. They had one big together, and it just goes to show you. The basketball in Division II is very good. It's not that much different than the lower rungs of Division I. And the guys are smaller. That's about it. They're smaller. You don't have these big guys like Tyrese Samuel, Cliff Amori type guys are not in Division II. But the guards are good. They're just small. Like those guards on FDU are terrific, and they know how to play. They can score. They can pass. They handle the ball. It's on the string, and they knew Tobin's system. So it's a really good story. FDU's turnaround. I was there Saturday. It was an awesome environment. I mean, to see the Rothman Center rocking, with 1,500 people, a lot of students rushing the court afterwards. It's a big deal. That's like the March moment for these guys, and they're playing the tournament final, which is bizarre. It was a semifinal, but because Merrimack's ineligible as a transitional D1 program, FDU got the berth, the AQ by getting to the final. So good for them. They took advantage of the situation, and it's fun. This is what March is about, The improbable stories is what makes the sport great, and FDU was exactly that this week.
Nice.
Yep. So that's why Greg Sankey wants to blow it all to hell to expand it to 90 teams or more.
Yeah, that guy's a clown, and
Too much.
They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna do that. What I think is gonna happen is they're probably gonna expand like piecemeal, but maybe like another 8, enlarge the first 4. But ideally, if they do that, they need to keep the integrity of the tournament by don't make the mid and low majors play in those early rounds.
Yes,
they should get it. They should get a pass into the main bracket. If you get your automatic bid, make some at-larges, duke it out in those early rounds if you want to expand it. That's the kind of the fight that's going on internally with college basketball right now, with all the non-power conferences in the discussion of expansion. So Sankey's a clown. He's stick to football, dude. But probably it's inevitable because the TV partner pulls a lot of strings here, CBS. But hopefully it's done piecemeal and not some giant 30-plus team expansion. And then you're making the St. Peter's of the world go an extra round and lessening the chances that you'll have these great Cinderella runs. So fingers crossed
on the accomplishment of getting there.
It's like you might as well just merge in the NIT tournament.
Well, right, and imagine like St. John's playing in the NCAA tournament this year. Like they'd be on the bubble right now. So that's kind of what you're dealing with. So hopefully cooler heads prevail on that front.
Yeah,
it's like you should.
They want to make it just like the
wild card.
What's that called?
Kind of like what they do with the baseball wild card. It's
more games equals better ratings across the board.
And not only that, keep the bigger like the bigger conference teams being in those play-in games.
Yeah, we'll see. It's just a thought that I heard floating around from some people on the inside.
Yeah, it's just like those. It'd be the equivalent of those bowl games, like the Tire Bowl, the Mac and Cheese Bowl, whatever, featuring a 6-6 and 5-7 team.
Who watches that stuff? What zombies watch that crap?
I have no idea, but apparently it's easy
what new weird cockeyed bowl game we have this year.
Yeah,
it feels like those types of games are what you would find at sports bars, like only at sports bars.
It's
like
just for ESPN
background noise, background things for people too drunk to care to watch.
On ESPN, the Ocho.
No, I would actually watch the Ocho with like dodgeball.
The Ocho is good, man. It's got watered down over the years, but yeah, you get.
Forget about this. Forget about college football. Back to the hoops.
Yeah. Anyway,
one more big thing this weekend in Jersey, and that's the Ivy League tournament. Jadwin Gym, historic place. Princeton's hosting. They're the 2 seed. They've had some epic games against Yale. If they meet in the final Sunday, noon on Selection Sunday, it'll be a great way to roll into the big dance with that game. So I plan on being there. And I'll tell you, Princeton can shoot the rock. After a season of watching Seton Hall and Rutgers throw up bricks, it's like watching another sport when you see Princeton play. They're really entertaining, guys. You should try to, if they get into that Ivy final or if they get into the NCAA tournament, you should check them out. It's fun to watch. They have four guys who can shoot the ball and a big man who passes like a point guard. It's really fantastic. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you heard it here first. Shooting for a Seton Hall Villanova semi Friday night. I can't wait. This is my first year covering the Big East tournament from the Garden as press. So I'm excited, but also nervous since it's my first time there. So this whole week will be a learning experience for me.
It's your first time. They'll be gentle. Don't worry. But yeah, that'll make it fun for the two of you guys if you want to make that interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the best time of the year and it's the best event going. So enjoy every second of it.
Of course,
appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much, Jerry, for your time. I know you had to take off. So it's been a pleasure. I'll catch you Wednesday at the Garden.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Man. Cheers.